All right. Well, welcome to our August Inspiring Story of Service. My name is Bill Butler, Chief of Staff at the National Veterans Memorial and Museum here in Columbus, Ohio. This month, we're connecting with a truly inspiring individual and one of my personal heroes, U.S. Army Chief Warrant Officer 2, Erich Phillips. Chief Phillips earned both the Distinguished Service Cross and the Silver Star for his actions during his deployment to Afghanistan during Operation Enduring Freedom 8 in 2007 and 2008. On August 22nd, 2007, he prevented the Taliban from overrunning his outpost 15 years ago this month. It was known as the Ranch House. Incidentally, he was also awarded the Silver Star for his actions at the Battle of Lanat on July 13th, 2008, during that same deployment. Erich, then the Mortar Section Sergeant for Chosen Company, second of the 503rd from the 173rd Airborne Brigade Combat Team. He was part of a 22-man element living and operating out of the Ranch House outpost and partnered with members of the Afghan National Army. They were situated approximately 7,000 feet above sea level, deep in the Hindu Kush Mountains in Nuristan province along the Pakistani border. And on August 22nd, they were attacked by approximately 60 to 80 Taliban fighters and almost overrun. As we continue to share the stories of the global war on terror and service members who served there, with our current exhibition, The 20-Year War, we're honored to have Erich here with us today to share his story of service and his story of transition as he gets ready to become a veteran after he departs the military. So, Erich, if you could just briefly tell us a little bit about yourself and, kind of what inspired you to join the military. And then, is that something you always wanted to do since you were a little kid? Or is that something that you met with a coach or a family member who had inspired your service?
Yes, sir. First off, thanks for that wonderful introduction. You might have sent it up a little high for me. Well, for myself, I did always want to join the military, starting out at a very young age. I always thought I was going to be a Marine, though. I didn't foresee the Army coming into picture. I wasn't a modeled citizen, if you would, when I was in my younger days. So the Marines, this is all pre-war. The Marines wasn't interested in hiring me or recruiting me. So I walked across the street and the Army said, yeah, we'll play ball. So I joined the Army and I've loved every bit of it. My experiences have been phenomenal. I've had a wonderful career. Coming up on 22 years of best time of my life, to be honest. I wouldn't be where I'm at today if it wasn't for the military, and that's not me just stating it. It's bottom line is it's the truth. It's the fact. As far as my military background, I started out as an 11 Charlie in the 82nd. I tried to go to Ranger Regiment out of basic training. But they weren't recruiting 11 Charlies at the time, just 11 Bravos. I was saying this is all pre-war. So I ended up going to the 82nd. Did my first deployment to Afghanistan in 2003. And that's kind of where, I guess, the hunger began, if you would. I just loved it. It was a great job. All my career is kind of like lined up and fell into place. Like I wasn't supposed to be an infantryman. I wasn't supposed to be a paratrooper. I was joining the military to be a culinary arts specialist. So I was going to be a cook. So I was actually getting out of the military when I ended up re-enlisting to go to the 173rd. A good buddy of mine that 06, he had just gotten banged up pretty good. I was getting ready to get out, and he had called me from the hospital, and he had told me what was going on and how he was a little distraught and whatever the case might have been. And I told him, I was like, look, dude, I was getting out, but check it out. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to walk into the retention office, and I'm going to ask him if there's a slot for Italy. I was like, if there's a slot for Italy, I'll re-enlist right now, and I'll be there for your next deployment. You don't have to worry about it. And lo and behold, when I went into the recruit to retention office, there was one slot for an 11 Charlie 3 Victor. And so I took it. Okay. I re-enlisted to go to Italy instead of getting out. And that's how I ended up in the 173rd. I was previously in the scout platoon, so I had gotten away from being an 11 Charlie. I was trying to swap over to be an 11 Bravo. And that's actually why I was getting out, is because my 4187 to become 11 Bravo was denied.
Okay.
So I was like, okay, cool. You don't want to let me do what I'm going to do. I'm getting out of the Army. Done deal. And then when Stefan called me and I re-enlisted to go over, it had been like 3 years since I had done any 11 Charlie stuff. My branch manager happened to be one of my old platoon sergeants. So I called him and I was like, look, man, I need to go to MLOC and route. Like, I don't know. I don't remember this stuff. And so he had
So
said,
real quick, what is MLOC for the audience?
MLOC
I know
is
what it is.
Yep. It's the Infantry Mortars Leaders Course. So once you become an E6 in a mortar platoon, it is best if you are MLOC certified so that you can run FDC, the Fire Direction Control, for a mortar section.
Yep. Okay.
Yep. And he was my former platoon sergeant, so he hooked it up. I did MLOC en route, reported over to Italy. It was interesting because I originally went to HHC, and I spoke with Sergeant Levy, and I told him, I was like, look, I've spent my entire career when I was in the mortars in HHC running the heavies. Let me go down to a line platoon so that way I can be more diverse. And I knew that that would put me closer to being 11 Bravo, which
Right.
was my comfort zone at that point in time. He's like, well, all my line platoons are kind of filled up right now. And then there was one dude who just decided he was getting out, and it just so happened to be a guy from Chosen Company. So Sergeant Levy's like, all right, Eric, you're going to Chosen Company. And I was like, yay, it worked out, because that's also where Stefan was. Yes, sir.
And then if you just talk a little bit about, so when you and I served, you were a mortar section sergeant, and then we were able to put you into a platoon sergeant position as a rifle platoon sergeant,
Yes,
and
sir.
that got approved. And then you decided you want to do bigger and better things and go to Special Forces assessment and selection, and then go into Special Forces. So if you just talk about that, and what was the desire to do that, and then what have you been doing here for the past 10 years or so in Special Forces, and what has that experience been like?
Yes, sir, absolutely. So I had actually, after the 0708 rotation, there was a couple of us during that rotation who were talking about going to selection. I went in December 08, got selected. When I came back to the unit, there was some sergeant majors who pulled me to the side and asked me, what would it take for me to stay? And it was be an infantry rifle platoon sergeant. I wanted to lead a group of paratroopers into combat.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's how I ended up sticking around. And I decided that it would be best if I continued my career elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
I reached out to the Q course, asked them if I was still able to go. They said it'd be complicated because at that point I was already, I want to say, an 18-month E7, and they didn't take senior E7s. They asked me to send my last, I think it was 3 NCOERs and my ERB.
Mm-hmm.
Once I sent that, I knew I was going to be accepted because, I've had a solid record. Upon graduating the Q course, I was a 18 Echo, a communications sergeant. I was lucky. I got sent to, back then, what was called the SIF. I was there from 2011 till 2017 when I went to the Warrant Officer course. And then I went to a normal line company as an assistant detachment commander as a W1. I did a year there, and I opted to go back to, at that point in time, the name had changed to the CRIF. Went back over there, was a detachment commander for a year. An opportunity came down to go back to Afghanistan. They needed some warrant officers in ACO, and there was a slot. I got asked, and I said absolutely. And then I went to ACO in May of 2019. I went back to ACO, and I've been there ever since.
Okay, so let's transition a little bit and shift back to the global war on terror, and specifically about your experience during the OEF 8 deployment. So like I said previously, you earned the Distinguished Service Cross and the Silver Star on one deployment. So what does wearing the second and third highest Valor awards mean to you?
What does it mean to me, or what I was facing at that point in time?
Well, let's unpack both. So
Okay.
you start with either one, and we'll shift to the other one.
At that point in time, it's like you said, it's kind of a huge ordeal. I mean, not to mention, I was what, 24, 25 years old.
Yeah.
I was still a child in my eyes, looking back. Granted, there's a lot of great soldiers out there that are that age and do phenomenal things. But I was young, and it went twofold. Um, so a portion of it was, hey, this has been bestowed upon me. Now there's a standard I must uphold, and I can never let that down. I can never bring that standard lower than the bar that's already been set. So that was a tremendous amount of pressure for a 25-year-old um, E7, newly pinned E7, going forward. And then the other side of it was, at the time, as you stated in the beginning, I was dealing with a lot of that PTSD that was being shoved down by me, being hidden. I didn't want to acknowledge it was there. So being that young person, there was a lot of, it never really interfered with work, but off duty drinking. And that's when the arrogance would come out. That's when it was, you know, oh, well, I've done this and I've done that. And this person, I got their cell number and I got that person's cell number. And it was a big burden for a young paratrooper to have to carry at that point in time. Now, what it means for me now, for the longest time, it was something I never talked about. It was something that, actually, right behind me, I just saw that was on a plaque on the wall, or the medals are over here on this shelf, just sitting there. Um, it was it was just something that, okay, that was the past. That's what I always told people when they did find out. It was like, because it wasn't something that I ever spoke about. So what it means to me now is, it's a tremendous honor. There's been a lot of times that things have happened, taken place, that people don't get recognized. So it's a tremendous honor to carry those forward, especially the Silver Star. I know the DSC is a big ordeal, but the Silver Star, for those people who fought, thank God they fought. They fought like warriors. Not all of us came back from that. Uh, it's a tremendous honor. It really is, to know, it's like you said, that I wear the second and third um, highest awards for what it is that we do. We train to go to war, then we go to war, and then there's the after effects of war, and being able to continue my service and help people and speak on behalf of those who, one, are too afraid to speak up, or
Mhm.
number two, those who no longer can speak up, so that their families can understand who it was that they were, what they represented, and what they did to ensure that the rest of us were able to come home. So,
If we can't, let's talk a little bit about what actually happened at the ranch house on August 22nd, 2007. So if you just do a very broad overview, you guys are up in the mountains, you're in this small combat outpost, less than a platoon, partnered with Afghan National Army soldiers, and what are you guys doing there? And then what happened that day and night?
it was an outpost that was built up
Mhm.
to put some relief on Cop Bella, who was a couple kilometers to the south of where we were located. They kept getting hit heavy, heavy, heavy. So they needed to establish another outpost in order to give those guys breathing room, per se. So that's where Ranch House came into play. Um, we were there to hold that ground. It was never going to be a permanent position. We went there knowing that the brigade commander and battalion commander had planned on closing it down during that rotation. So we arrived May 22nd. We stepped foot off off the aircraft. But I remember stepping off that bird onto the LZ and then looking straight up at what was supposed to be our living quarters and thinking to myself, this is not where I want to be.
Right.
At this point in time, this was my 4th deployment. I had done 1 in Afghanistan, 2 in Iraq, and this was my 4th deployment. So immediately looking at it, I knew it wasn't a good place. So immediately we went into refortifying positions, stuff like that. We were there, like I said, we hit the ground May 22nd. From May 22nd all the way till August 22nd. I mean, we're talking 3 months and not even a round's fired. It led to a little bit of relaxation, if you would, more than I would like to admit. Come the morning of 22nd of August, I was laying in bed. I remember waking up to a hail of gunfire and explosions, and it was like all hell just opened loose. And I had jumped up out of bed, or I was in my cot. I just kind of sat up. I was like looking around, listening, and then you'd hear the machine guns rocking, and you hear explosions off in the distance. And I was like, all right. So I got up and I started getting dressed. When I say dress, I mean like putting my kit on. I remember I had grabbed my nods and started adjusting my nods, and I had looked at my watch. I don't know why. And it was like 4:58 or something. And I was like, oh, well, I'm not going to need these because I'd already accustomed to the time. So I threw them under my pillow, racked my gun, grabbed my LHMBC, my light handheld mortar ballistic computer, grabbed my FTC book, and I started heading out the door. And as soon as I stepped out that door was when the realization of how serious things were kind of set in, as the ANA were abandoning their post and running right by me. I mean, like running right by me, like at a dead sprint. And I remember stopping in the middle of the trail. I got these books and I got my gun and I'm looking at them. And I was like, where are you guys going? And they're like, Taliban. And they're yelling up, Taliban, Taliban. I was like, yeah, really? You want to help me fight them? And I was yelling to them to get back up to their post. And they're just like yelling, shaking their heads no. And they're saying, Taliban, Taliban. And once they bypassed me, that was when the fire erupted right at my feet. And once I saw that dirt kick up, I was like, yep, they're in the base. And that's where everything kind of unfolded for me at that point in time. Anything that could have went wrong kind of did go wrong. Once that burst went off, I dove into the mortar pit. But when I dove in there, my mortar ballistic computer hit the ground and tumbled, and when it did, it Z'd out everything.
So Z'd out means all the data in it to shoot safely and effectively is gone.
Everything gone. Luckily, we had established some TTPs, portions marked on our mortar firing point. Problem was I never thought we'd have to drop rounds on the dead center of our fire base, so I didn't have anything for that. So there was no data for shooting rounds inside your own fire base. I yelled over to a position, told them to inform me what was going on because my radio also dropped, Phil. We lost comms with 2 of our posts, one to the north, one to the south. I'd moved down to the talk, spoke with Lieutenant Ferrara. I left, and that's when I had made the decision that we were going to advance forward, and that's what me and Lieutenant Ferrara had talked about.
Okay.
Ran up the mountain, got pinned down, medic got hit, pulled him back. I had to break contact from my position. Then the A-10 strafed down north to south, east to west, down the center of the fob. Then I grabbed a couple more dudes, ran up to the post, secured a couple more dudes, counted for those who were there, left some guys there to move the wounded down, and then took a couple extra dudes to push back up to post 3 to try to recover one of the missing soldiers, which was Deloria.
So if you can just briefly describe, so at this point, how many wounded? And then when you say run up to, what are you talking about? Are you talking about, 50 meters, distance between point A and point B, and is there also an elevation change?
Yeah.
Right.
So the distance actually wasn't that bad, I don't think. I think it was probably maybe 25 meters. But the problem it was 25 meters of like 75 feet of elevation change, because when I stated like it was on the side of a mountain, it was literally on the side of a mountain. So yeah, it was literally run, like sprint to position, find cover, catch your breath, relax, lay down some fire in order to free up the opportunity to then push to the next position to cover, because you're not doing a dead sprint up
Right.
that. It wasn't going to happen. I don't care what kind of shape you're in. You
Right.
got rounds flying at you. You're in full kit. You're trying to lay scunion. Like, it was everything that could go against you. One point in time, I went black on ammo, and I had to use the medic's ammo that was hit. RPG put me on my rear end, went right over my. I thought I was going to die at that point. I remember seeing it was like slow motion, like in the movie, just coming dead for me, and I was like, "All right, well, this is the big one, baby. Here I come." And it just went over my shoulder, hit behind me, put me on my face. That point in time, once I got the reinforcements from post 2, at that point in time, I slowed everybody down. I knew moving from the ASP and the mortar pit to post 2, I was moving to friendlies. So it was all dead out sprint. It was like, we're giving it everything we got. We're getting it. Once we were leaving post 2, and now we're pushing to post 3 up the mountain, which at that point was probably about another 50 meters from us. But once again, 75 feet change in elevation. We took our time. I had dudes popping up over culverts, laying down security while people came up in the center, and we would come. I would have them come up at different times. Like I would signal over like, hey, left side. They'd pop a 240 up, and then I'd tell right side who'd come up with a saw, and then us come up in the center to ID what we could see prior to coming out into the open, and then advancing across to reoccupy post 3.
And so at this point, you also have Taliban in the wire, right?
Oh yeah.
So
Yes,
how many did you have to contend with?
initially sitting at the ASP, I remember laying down on my sights and just dropping like 5 or 6 people. When I got pinned down in between the mortar pit and getting to post 2, I got pinned down in between the two of them. I remember engaging, like 15, 20 people just coming around the side, firing back down towards the A&A. Like, I could see them all running around, acting chaotic, transitioning to the other side of the building and engaging up by post 3. I could see them plain as day running around, and then there was a point where one of the living quarters, dude was on the back side of the building, and I'm on this side. I have the medic who's already shot sitting next to me. I'm engaging, pulling his ammo because now I'm out of ammo. And me and this dude are fighting back and forth. I remember him spraying through, because they were wood buildings. I remember him spraying through the wood building trying to hit me.
Right.
And I started throwing hand grenades. I couldn't engage him because he kept hiding. So I was like, all right, I got something you can't hide from, dude. And I started chunking hand grenades until the shooting stopped. And then that's when I had to pull Dirkinitz, our medic, back down to get treatment. I couldn't treat him, so I wanted to pull him back to the mortar firing point where I had 3 other dudes, have them begin treatment, and I could reconsolidate, reorganize, and push back up the mountain.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. How much time has transpired with this?
Sir, I'll be honest with you. Like, I have no idea. The first time I looked at my clock, like I said, it was like 4:57, 4:58 in the morning.
Okay.
The next time I remember looking at my clock, it was like 2:30, 3 o'clock, and the reinforcements were coming in.
Okay. And then what finally broke the back of the attack?
I think, my opinion, what broke the back was when those A-10s came through. When those A-10s came through and we strafed our own base, I think they were like, holy shit, these guys don't care. They're going to die in place, or we're going to die trying to take it. And I think that's what broke the attack, was the fact that Lieutenant Ferrara was able and willing to go right down the center, left to right, north to south. Hey, let them have it.
Right.
I think that's what did it, in my opinion.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's nothing quite like the roar of the engines and then the roar of the chain gun going off.
Yeah,
I can imagine when it's
very
just you're just like, holy cow. on that fight. I mean, they've got the high ground, they've got the momentum, they've got the element of surprise, and just the fact that you all were able to fight back and win that terrain and win the day was, I mean, it's just a testament to U.S. Army paratroopers and what they can do.
22 people were on that ground, and 12 of which ended up wounded.
And then any killed in that fight?
Not U.S., no.
Yeah. Okay.
We had some that were sitting pretty critical, but we were able to sustain them long enough to get them medevaced out.
Right. And the Valor Awards aren't awarded and presented because things go well. They're presented because things are not going well, and somebody has to put themselves in extreme danger to try and rectify a situation or try to save their buddies. And
absolutely.
So, you were a informal leader in the battalion. A lot of guys, looked up to you based on your experience and what you did during the deployment, having been awarded both the DSC and the Silver Star. But you sought treatment. But my thought is, guys were thinking, holy shit, if Sergeant Phil's going to behavioral health, it's got to be okay. Because he's a bad Muldoon, and if he's seeking help, then maybe it's okay for me to do it. And that helped tremendously with the kind of the tone and tenor amongst the 800 paratroopers, almost 900 paratroopers, who, they all had a chip on their shoulder because, number one, they're paratroopers, and number two, they just right. They're in a great unit, and they know they're going back to Afghanistan. So what spurred you to seek mental health help?
It was my wife. We were dating at the time. She told me of a few things that I would do at night with the night terrors and reactions, and some of the things I would say to her when I was drinking, because alcohol is a depressant, and a lot of us think that that initial onset, couple drinks here, that initial onset feels so good, but nobody thinks of the adverse effects of the continued drinking, which is what a lot of us end up doing who do suffer from a type of PTSD or a situation like that, is the binge drinking. Right. And she would tell me about the things that I would say to her. Some of my actions. I never put my hands on my wife, or not when we were dating, not now or anything like that. But there was things I would say that were very hurtful, and sometimes words are a lot worse than physical actions, because bruises heal, but words don't. Your heart doesn't. So her talking to me, and my love for her, I guess you would say, led me to wanting to seek out treatment. Like, okay, she's right. I can't be acting like this. It's nobody deserves to be treated this way. Mm-hmm. And once I took that initial step and the education process begins, that's where the real power comes in, because that's where you start learning of what TBI truly is, what PTSD truly is, or now we're coining the new term PTS, because people thought PTSD was a bad term. But with all that going on, the education process is what has allowed me to continue seeking treatment ever since I stepped foot in that office in the beginning of 2009. I still go see a counselor now. I'm on medications. I don't plan to be on medications for the rest of my life, but I am on them now because there are things that have to assist us with sometimes, and it's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. A lot of people think, oh, well, it stops you from deploying. It stops you. I'm a damn Green Beret, man. I've been doing all this stuff for the last 12 years, and it hasn't stopped me from deploying anywhere. I've done Afghanistan twice, and I've done 10 different rotations down in South America. So I'm living proof that it does not affect your career.
Right. Just last week, somebody reached out for help, and you dropped what you're doing to do that. And without getting into who that person is, but how did you find out that he needed help?
I kind of laid into him a little bit when I got up there, but it wasn't him who told me.
Right.
It was his spouse. His wife had contacted me and said, "Hey, you know, I'll just go by his first name. Brooks is in a bad spot. Like
Mhm.
he's kind of going backwards. This is happening. This is happening. He was up seeing family, which led to this, and he's in a bad spot. I'm afraid for him."
Mhm.
Um, and I was like, "Okay, well, here's what's going to happen." I rescheduled every appointment that I had set for last week. Um, I spoke with my wife. My wife agreed 100%. And I jumped in a car and I drove 7 hours to go have him remove his head from his fourth point of contact and kind of lift him back up again.
Right. Which
But yeah,
I'm sure is exactly what he needed.
it
And
was 100%.
yeah.
He told me that actually, if you don't mind, I want to read the text
Okay.
from him directly. It said, he wrote, "You have no idea how much you mean to me. That's mostly because I am a ghost, but also when shit hits the fan, true colors come to the surface. Eric, you have shown me that blood is not always equivalent to what family is defined as. You and Tim are the only two I needed to redirect my energy into those who deserve it. I love you, man, and I will be forever grateful." Like, just receiving a message like that, following that situation, because a lot of people think that once family gives up on you, once that blood gives up on you,
Right.
that there's nothing left. But they forget about the people that they bled alongside of. And even though I've never deployed with him, I've never been to a school, I've never even been in the same damn unit as this guy.
Okay.
However, we met each other at an event or I met him when I did inpatient. That's when I met him.
Okay.
PTSD treatment.
Right.
That's where I met him. But he's another soldier who's been
Yeah.
through situations. Nobody understands us but us,
Right.
And that's what I told him when I got there. I was like, "Look, man, nobody gets us but us." So reaching out to, and I'm not saying that family can't help, but reaching out to somebody who hasn't been there, hasn't done it, it's hard. That's why so many veterans don't want to go. That's why
Mhm.
so many soldiers during the unit didn't want to go and talk to some civilian or some psychiatrist who spent all of his time in a career field, got his degree, and now he's a psychiatrist for a paratrooper battalion of badasses. Nobody
Right.
wants to go talk to this guy because he can't relate. What can I tell him that he can sit there and tell me, like, "Oh, I understand"? You don't understand. You have no idea.
Right.
But when we speak to each other, it's different. It is somebody who can understand. It is somebody who's feared for their life. It
Mhm.
is somebody who's been in a similar situation. May not be the exact situation, but it's a similar situation. Yes.
So, for you personally, what do you do to kind of clear your head? And so, what do you personally do to kind of get out of your own headspace?
I have two things I do. So one, I carry a word search puzzle with me everywhere I go.
Okay.
If I just need some time to myself, I'll sit to the side and I do word searches. I didn't even know that was a thing for me until back in January. But I enjoy it. It's relaxing.
Yeah.
I can do it, sit here, have a conversation. My wife says it's absurd. She's like, "I don't know how you do that." But I can sit here, we'll have a full on conversation. And if I need to focus, I can sit here, do my word search, and be able to answer and reply. And I'm actually taking in more than if I sat here and I was looking and conversating, paying attention. Like, I'm actually taking in more of the conversation, if that makes
Right.
sense. I'm more in the
Yeah.
present, in the now, than
Mhm.
if I was sitting there staring at you because my mind's not spinning over 50 different things.
Right.
And that's something I carry with me out and about. And then when I'm
Okay.
home, what I do, don't judge me, I do a lot of puzzles.
All right. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Recently, I started a little engraving business,
Okay.
and I have found that therapeutic. And I
Yep.
never would have thought that. It's just a matter of somebody telling me a general idea of a design that they're looking for to have engraved on a personalized like coffee cup or water bottle, whatever the hell. You know what I mean?
Right.
Me taking that idea, building it up, using my PowerPoint skills that the Army provided me,
Right.
building up like a schematic, if you would, sending it to him, and then being like, oh, we'll tweak this, or be like, oh, that's phenomenal, send it to me. And then putting it on something, putting it on a physical object, and then handing it over and seeing the look on their face. Like
Right.
that has become therapeutic for me, even though it's something so small as etching a water bottle, engraving a water bottle or a coffee or whatever, but to me, it's the joy I get out of seeing their faces. And I know that's the end result. So
Right.
I think that's what makes it therapeutic for me.
Mhm.
As I'm sitting here putting in all this work for it, but then I
Right.
know that when I hand it over, the look on their face is what gets me. If I could only put one thing out there and one thing only, it would most definitely be that you're never alone, that there's always somebody willing and able to hear you out, because sometimes that's all it takes.
Mhm.
Throughout my studies of the mind and TBI and everything like that, I've learned that if you don't act in the first 10 seconds of a thought, it's like 5 to 10 seconds of a thought coming into your mind, then your body and your mind will automatically choose the lazy way out. So if you think about calling somebody in that first 5 to 10 seconds, you
Mhm.
think about calling somebody to have a conversation with, to just let them know how you feel, call them immediately. Speak to them. There's lots of people out there, like me, Colonel Butler, who would 100% drive to the ends of the world just to sit down and have a conversation, just to be able to hear your voice the next day. So
Absolutely.
that's definitely what my one message is that I would want to get out there to people. You're never alone.
All right. Well, thank you, Eric. So thanks for
Absolutely.
your service. Thanks for what you're continuing to do for our brothers and sisters in arms. Thanks for what you're going to do as you get ready to transition from the military and become a veteran. And thanks for your service to our country.